Planning your future is important, and RedBridge Financial has helped many families develop a financial plan that helps provide them protection with multiple options for their future. I will let them explain what they do and why it matters, but I want to introduce David Bailey and Terrence Palaskis. So thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and Terrence and David.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, are we on? Ready to roll? Okay. So my name is Terrence Palaskis. I'm a senior vice president at RedBridge Financial. And basically we help, whether you're a business owner or whether you're an individual, families plan for the future, plan for any financial goal whatsoever, whether it's short-term or long-term. So, and we'll get into, you'll probably learn a little bit more about what we do as far as when we go through the presentation. The presentation isn't focused on us, it's focused on you guys and your goals, hopefully. We wanted to make it as interactive as possible. So the less we talk and the more you talk, I think the better everything will go. So there's a few opportunities for comments, and we'd love for you to just chime in. You know, you don't have to raise your hand, just pipe in. But the theme is investing for your future. So it's probably important for us to define that term. You know, what does it mean to invest? So I want to ask you, just to open it up right away, when it comes to investing, what comes to your mind when you think of that word investing? And there's no wrong answer. Just feel free to shout it out.
I think it's obviously investing, retirement, 401k, IRAs,
Okay.
potentially doing, having a house, get some equity built in the house.
Good. Excellent. Those are both good examples of investing. There's quite a bit more. Anybody else have any suggestions? All right.
I want to say life insurance.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the other options are investing in your business. So if you're self-employed, a lot of people will do that. Real estate was mentioned about, your own primary residence, but a lot of people like to flip homes for a living. They like to, or they're renters, they like to have rental properties. So, you think anything else?
No, so those are the things we wanted to think there. When people think of investing, especially in this setting, a lot of times they'll think right away the market, 401k, but there's a lot of different ways that people can invest. And we just wanted to make sure that you thought about all the different ways. We're not going to focus on them, but those all play a part in planning for the future, depending on what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish. I know most of us here probably don't own our own business, but at some point, if you're in the construction industry or whatever, you may do that. So, we're going to talk about how to plan for that.
So when you think of certain ways of investing, probably the reason they stand out to you is because that's what maybe your parents did, or maybe you've seen that on the internet or television. Maybe you have good friends that use those methods of investing. But here's another question for you. Why might the way other people have invested not necessarily be the best way for you to invest in your future? Can you think of some reasons why what somebody else did, even though it may have worked out really great for them, why that might not be always the best for you?
Maybe separate goals.
Absolutely. Exactly. Thank you. Anything else?
Say knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't have the knowledge of the housing market and flipping stuff like that, then it's probably not best to get into that. Resources.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, and there may be some of you that you're a little older, or maybe your parents, and you have children. You want to put those kids through college. That's a goal. There might be some of you that aren't married, don't have a family. So as a result, you have different goals. Some of you, when you retire, you might want to, I have a couple of individuals that bought a huge RV and they're just, hitting the road. And then there's other people that like to have a second home up north, for example. So depending on what your goals are, that's gonna change a lot about how you invest, right? Since each of your circumstances are different, the solution or the approach needs to be customized for you. So I'll give you a real life example. Someone Dave and I have known, a gentleman that the way he knew how to invest was to work really, really hard, which is always a good approach, and then just put every dime that he could back into his business because he believed in himself, and he was successful. He bought a building, found it, it was in a prominent spot in the city. He started out with a 2,000 square foot office or shop, and then he expanded it to 8,000 square feet. Eventually, the business was worth a little over $1 million. So now, eventually, he wanted to retire. But, I'm sorry, was there a comment? Okay, sorry. Eventually, he wanted to retire, and unfortunately, he had to wait until someone could buy the business because all of his assets were tied up in the business. So he had no other investment. So 5 years later, there was somebody that was willing to buy the business. It was for a small down payment and then regular monthly payments for several years after that. Well, as you can imagine, when there's a small down payment, there's not much skin in the game. And so the buyer, after about 2 years, just ran down the business, and the business closed within 2 years. So this very successful businessman did not have a successful retirement. It was disappointing, and he had worked hard. But the reason is that he had all his eggs in one basket, so to speak. He invested the way he knew how, and it wasn't the right approach for him. That's what his parents did. He thought that was the right way for him, and it didn't turn out well. Now, you can use a tried and true strategy that thousands of companies use, and this is whether or not you're self-employed or you get a W-2, a check from your employer. This is an approach that you can use when it comes to investing. So what I'd like you to do now, just to keep it interactive here, is just name a few well-known companies. What's a company that you know that's a pretty solid, stable company you've heard of before?
Dow Chemical.
Good answer. Anybody else?
Amazon,
There you
Apple.
go. Excellent. Anybody else?
I was gonna say Amazon, but he beat me to it.
All right.
All right.
I'm gonna say Pfizer. How about Pfizer now? That seems pretty solid with everything going on, right? So
Absolutely. So there's obviously we could go on all day about which businesses, some well-known companies, but just about every one that somebody would name is a company that is on the stock market, right? That's one of the reasons we know some of these companies. Obviously, they, with Pfizer and Amazon, they touch our lives every day. But it's interesting with companies that are on the stock market, they don't just have one owner. They may have one founder that's very recognizable, but everybody who owns stock in that company is an owner of that company. So I'll give you an example that I picked, Verizon. So most of us use Verizon for phone service. There's over 4 billion shares of Verizon. So if you own one share of Verizon, you're a 1/4 billionth shareholder, right? So the more shares you own, the greater percentage of ownership you have. Now, Verizon is successful because what they do with their revenue, the money that comes in, is they diversify. And whether or not you're a business owner or not, that's something that you ought to consider doing. When the checks come in, diversify. So what Verizon does is they take some of the profit they have in their business and they reinvest it into their business. So they build more cell towers. They may try to improve their customer service. I don't know how well that is, but they try to reinvest it into the company. But they also return profit every single quarter back to their shareholders. It's called the dividend. So every year they give a shareholder approximately 4.5% of their interest back. So they put some profit back into the wallet of every business owner. Every shareholder gets a dividend check. Now they don't have to wait to sell their stock to get a profit. That means every year they're getting a return on their investment. And one reason companies like Verizon are profitable is because they reward their owners every year. So what does that have to do with you? Well, whether you're self-employed or not, you're going to do better if you have a return on your investment now, not just 20 years from now. So with people, especially who own their own business, that think I got to sink every dime that I get back after I pay my bills into my business, and then I'll get the value out of it 10 years down the road, or 15 years down the road, or 20 years down the road. That's an approach that could very well fail. Alternatively, if you take some of those funds out of the business and invest it elsewhere, now you have diversified. It's the same even if you get a check from your employer. A lot of people say, well, I'm going to spend everything I make, right? What do I have at the end of the month? Well, we spend what we make, right? But if you took 5, 10, 15% of your annual income and put it aside for a future goal, then just think of how much more successful you'd be in the future if at least some of that was set aside for other future purposes, rather than taking every dime you get and spending it, whether it's on clothes or food or recreation, that kind of thing. So any questions so far? Okay, so the point so far is, if you follow the example that thousands of companies that are successful that have come before us and carve out like a dividend check for yourself, you could be very successful. So the next question is, well, if I do that, if I take that approach, what should I do with that dividend check that I give to myself every year? So we're going to give it to David now, and he'll take it from there.
One of the reasons a lot of people are concerned about investing in the market is because of risk. Some people love risk and we'll do whatever. Other people hate risk. I can tell you, I'll give myself as an example. As an individual investor, I love going into the stock market, investing in stocks. If I talk about it with my wife, it doesn't go well. She wants to put every penny she makes into the bag she keeps in the freezer. And that way she knows right exactly where it's going to be at whenever. She's not going to ever lose a penny that way, unless my kids go into the freezer and take some money out. But
it's cold money.
It's cold hard cash right there. But you work hard for your money. You want your money and you want to be there for you. But for any investment, there is going to be some sort of risk. And risk takes all different types of forms. So we'll talk about some of those here. I'll give you an example of one type of risk. You ever heard of a gentleman named Taylor Davis? Raise your hand if you've heard of him. And I didn't expect anyone to hear of the name Taylor Davis, but Taylor Davis played for the New York Yankees in 2015. Here's why no one's ever heard of him. He played for one of the most well-known teams in the world, but he never once had an at bat. He never came up to bat in the entire season. He made it to this highest level, but he never experienced that joy of having an at bat. There's a lot of different sports analogies we can use with what we're going to talk about here with risk. For example, you may have heard this one. Wayne Gretzky said, you'll miss 100% of the shots you never take. So that's one of the risks that many people who don't want to get involved in the market take is they pass up on opportunities for their investments to grow. We'll look at this first slide here. And one of the things that it tells us is the riskiest thing we can do is take no risk. And here's what we mean by that. Just look at the example here. You can put your money away into the bank. Many of us do that. We have a bank account, but a bank is going to pay you about 1%, probably even less than that right now. But we'll just, for argument's sake, give you 1%. So if you just put away $300 a month and say, okay, I'm going to start saving money for retirement, notice the difference that a 1% return on your investment can make versus being invested in the stock market. So $300 per month for 30 years just in the bank, 1%, you would have saved $126,000 for retirement. You think about that for a minute, it probably wouldn't last long, would it? Most of us, say, okay, I could make that stretch 2, maybe 3 years in retirement where I add Social Security to that. However, just by taking some risk, by being invested in the stock market has averaged over the life of the market for the last 100 years, a little over 10%. So if we said we got those same returns, look at the growth. So 600, it's almost a quarter of, or almost $500,000 difference just by taking that risk and putting that money away. Now, we're not talking about just trying to take any sort of, just wanting, just throw it out there. We're talking about a calculated risk of, being diversified in the market. For example, if I said, just take risks, there's a lot of things we could say. You jump out of an airplane and hope that you land on a pile of mattresses, right? That's risk. Or you could jump on an airplane and have a parachute on your back. One of those, you're going to be successful. And one of those, if you hit the mattresses, you're going to be world famous because no one's ever done it before, but you're probably going to be dead. That's when we talk about taking a risk in the stock market, we're talking about taking a calculated risk and making sure that you work your investments in such a way that we can be steady, we can know the outcomes over a period of time. So as you're thinking about planning for the future, that's one thing you want to think about is, how do I make sure that my risk is calculated? How do I make sure that I'm taking the risk in such a way that I don't have to worry about one, failing, or two, not doing anything, because in the long run, that's a risk to yourself and to your retirement plan also. Many of you probably have a 401k or a simple IRA or some sort of retirement plan that you're using. We'll talk in a few minutes here about how to make sure that you are putting it in a portfolio, putting it into an investment where things are calculated and where you understand the ups and downs and how that'll help you be successful in the long run. Our next slide will kind of highlight that in just a little bit, even a little bit more, I want to say, simple terms. Terrence, if you move that slide there.
Oh, sure.
In this, Terrence, why don't you go ahead and explain this next one?
Sure. Now, one of these days it'll switch. There we go. All right. So you've probably heard the expression "time is money," right? Everybody's probably heard that expression. That was first told by Benjamin Franklin. At least he's credited with that expression. Benjamin Franklin said time is money. And what that basically means is that our time is limited. And when we work for money, it takes time, right? Now, if any of us have gone through 9th grade algebra, if A equals B, then B equals A, right? They're the same. So if time is money, which I would agree, money is also time. So a real good definition of money is stored time. You can buy time with money in a sense. So the example here on the right, if you have $300 and you decide to spend that on clothing, now that you could have spent it, you could have invested it in the market, right? If you earn 10% on that $300, you're not putting away $300 a month. You just have $300 and you put it in the bank and you don't touch it for 30 years. You will have $5,200. So that $300 will have grown to $5,200. Now, if you sat down with somebody, pre-retirement, obviously, and you said, if I can get $5,000 a month in retirement, then I could probably live on that. Now, some of you might need more than that. Some of you might need less, but a lot of people we talk to, they say sometimes something in that range is reasonable for them. So if you just saved $300 and you tucked it away at 10% for 30 years, that would buy you a month of retirement. So it says here, assuming you could live on $5,000 a month, foregoing those clothes today means retiring 1 month earlier. So we're not saying that, you should go without clothes. Even with Zoom, we should still be clothed. But at the same point, you can see what, if setting aside some funds now can literally buy you time later. And so that education, when we talk to our clients about stuff like that, that really opens their eyes, especially as they get closer to retirement, they're realizing their goal. Or maybe it's not retirement, maybe it's getting your kids to college and it's just a year or two away for your kids. That's a huge thing when you're able to see the results of your efforts for saving. So now let's give our attention to Dave. I think you got the next slide.
Yeah,
right?
so on this one here, I always love this. We all heard the saying, you get what you pay for. Now, with the group here, probably most of you, I'm assuming, if I'm right, Kathy, are all in some sort of construction trade, doing something. You've gone to a client's house before, you've gone to a customer's house, you're going to do a remodel or something, and you notice that before you, they had tried to do the work themselves. So maybe the last time they did a remodel, they did it themselves. How does that usually go when you go in there? Well, sometimes it's obvious right away, right? Things are just horrible. And you're looking at the project going, what did these people do? Other times it might look okay from the outside, but then you start opening things up. You realize maybe they didn't follow the codes properly. In the long run, it causes more work for you. You have different projects that you have to do to fix the problems. That's why people hire you to do their work, right? They want to make sure that it's done properly and professionally. They also recognize that their time can be spent doing things that they're good at and hiring you to do something that you're good at. The same can be true when it comes to investing. This was a study that was done, actually, I believe Fidelity did this study. And if you notice here, now this is the last 20 years, not including the last 2 years. These numbers would look a lot different, quite honestly, if it was up to 2021. But if you look at from 1998 to 2018, that the stock market returned 7.2%. So let's just say you said, I'm going to just put money into the S&P 500. I'm just going to let my money grow. You would have returned 7.2%. The same time, the bond market did a little less than that. It averaged 4. So if you had bought bonds, you would have been about 4.6. Now, during that same time period, inflation rose 2.1. So here's our interactive part of our discussion here. Look here, we got Curtis is still on camera, so we're going to let him be our guesser. What do you think during that time period the average investor returned for himself?
The average return for himself.
Yeah, the market did 7.2.
Let's just do I'm gonna go somewhere in the middle, like 3%.
Okay, so he did half. You're saying he did half of what the stock market did. That's probably a good guess. Generally, people in their mind, they think, okay, if the market did 7.2 and I just put my money there, I could probably get close to that. I could be somewhere close, but you're about right. The average investor during that same time period returned 3.4%. So why? If you could just put your money away in the stock market and just let it grow and get 7, why would we get 3? There's quite a few different reasons. Anyone have a guess on why?
Just don't know how to manage it. Put it where it
Okay.
needs to be to grow.
Okay, yeah, very good. Garrett?
Say it depends on when they actually put money in,
All right.
obviously how much they put in, and then if they kept it in or pulled it out.
They're very good. One of the things that we all know, buy low and sell high, right? I mean, that's just obvious. If we could figure out a formula to do that, Terrence and I would not be here doing this presentation today. I can tell you that. So that's not the way the market works. No one knows what tomorrow is going to bring. However, one of the reasons why most investors do quite a bit less than the general market is because the market goes up, and what do we as people tend to think? Oh, the market's going up. I got to get in on the market, right? I got to get in and ride this wave. Uh-oh, the market's going down. Uh-oh, I'm starting to lose money. I better get out. That's the typical investor reaction. That's the opposite of what we need to do, right? That's not buying low and selling high. That's buying high and selling low. That tends to be what is the problem with a lot of times when we try to go on our own. We don't have the time to do the research. We don't have time to sit and figure out, okay, what's going to happen in the future? What's going on with this company? What's going on with that company? Because day to day, you're running your job. You're doing what you have to do to make a living. That's why it's important to, talk to someone, have someone who, as a professional, is kind of helping to guide you, helping to make decisions, doing the research for you that you don't always have the time to do. Now, with that said, the analysts aren't even always right. Fidelity did another study, so I like this one. Picture, maybe you've watched on MSNBC or some of these shows, they got these analysts that come on television, right? And they tell you, this is what the market's going to do. The market's going to grow this much, or the market's going to grow that much. These guys are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to sit on television and tell you and I what the market's going to do. I don't have a slide for this one, but Fidelity did a study for the last 17 years. And they researched these guys and they said, okay, they tell us what the market's going to do. We should listen to them or we shouldn't listen to them. How often were these analysts right?
Half the time, maybe.
Seems reasonable, right? It's a guess. They could go up or down. They found that they were right 7% of the time.
Wow.
So it's not an exact science. It's not you have to be able to bear the ups and the downs, and that's why risk is involved. But when we talked about it, it's talking about calculated risk, making sure that we're not just putting your money in one basket, but making an overall plan for your future that will help you to be successful. Our next slide will kind of highlight a little bit more of that. And Terrence, if you want to discuss that one.
So we've been talking up to now about the importance of investing and taking risks. And there's a lot of different types of investments, right? Now we're going to talk a little bit about how also it's important to determine what type of account you want to invest in. So, that's the thing that holds the investments, right? So you can be invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and then how is it being held? So this triangle is really a very simple, easy way to demonstrate basically the three different ways you can hold assets. They could be taxable, they could be tax deferred, or they could be tax free. So out of those three, which sounds most appealing to you?
Tax free, right?
Amen. I agree. Tax-free works for me. So now, if that was, that's a pretty good, I'm sure all of us would agree with that. But the challenge becomes, the IRS doesn't make it terribly easy to do that. So as you can see, there's a lot of taxable investments, taxable accounts. They're CDs, they're money market accounts, bank accounts, mutual funds, stock dividends we just talked about, real estate, all of those are taxable. So when you sell those investments or you realize a return on those investments, there's a tax on those. There are accounts that maybe some or all of you have that are tax deferred. They'd include 401k plans or IRAs. So if you have a 401k or an IRA, you have deferred taxes. It doesn't mean you don't get to pay it. The IRS will make sure you do when you take the money out of the account. But when you put it in, it was a tax deduction. So let's say you put 3 or 5 grand in this year into your 401k or your IRA. You don't pay taxes on that 3 or 5 grand this year. But when you take out the money, you'll pay taxes on that as well as the gain. Now that top part of the box, you can see there's not a lot of tax-free options, and that's not by coincidence. The federal government's not going to just let us tuck all of our assets away tax-free. So there's 3 options: municipal bonds, and you saw a previous slide that shows how some bonds return 4.6 and municipal bonds return typically much less than that. So it's not really appealing for most folks. Roth IRAs. How many here have heard of a Roth IRA? All right, and yeah, so a Roth IRA, you're going to put that money in after tax. So if you put $3,000 to $5,000 this year into a Roth, you will have paid taxes on that. However, when you take the money out, and if it's gain, which it should, you will pay no taxes on that account. So all of the gain on that account is tax-free. So that's really nice for people when they're retiring to have more than just their 401k, right? Because if you just have money in your 401k when you retire, let's say you have $1 million in there, that's awesome. Every dollar of that is going to be taxed. So as you take that money out based on your tax bracket, if it's 12, 20% tax bracket, that's the federal tax on it plus the state tax. So if you have a bucket of money set aside or an account that's a Roth, that would be an account where when you withdrew the money, there's no tax on it. So that makes a huge difference when you're buying items in retirement, let's say lump sum items or large big ticket items. Now, the one we didn't talk about yet is permanent life insurance. So I think Kathy mentioned one of the ways at the beginning we talked about different ways to invest. Life insurance is a way to invest. And not a lot of people know that. Most people don't think of life insurance as a way of doing that, but the federal government does allow you to put money aside into a life insurance policy. And there's ways to extract that money out of the policy. You're building equity. And the way you pull out that money, it can almost always be tax-free as long as you pull it out the proper way. So that's what's nice about that is you have a limit to Roths. You can only put $6,500 a year into a Roth, but you don't have any limits to the amount of money you can put away in a permanent life insurance policy. So we have clients that put in quite a bit more than that, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 a year, based on their personal abilities. And they're looking forward to any money they pull out of that policy when they're in retirement will be tax-free. What's also nice about that is that you can pull that money out before you're 59 and a half, and there will be no IRS penalty. If you pull money out of your 401k before you're 59 and a half, you get to pay the federal government an extra 10%. on top of the taxes. So understanding this triangle can be very, very helpful and very profitable to you in the future. So any questions so far?
So as you're working with an advisor, the one thing you want to make sure is that they personalize things to you. You've probably all seen maybe Susie Orman, or I think in the locally we have the Clark Howard show. There's the guy, what's the guy down in Nashville?
Ramsey?
Dave Ramsey. All of them have good ideas, right? And they're not bad in and of themselves, but it's not personalized to you. So again, think about, for you guys in the construction trade, when you go in to talk to someone about, okay, you want to remodel your kitchen, tell me a little bit of what you're looking for. They're going to tell you their ideas. They're going to tell you what they want, what they hope to accomplish. And then you put together a plan. You put together how you're going to do that for them. It's no different when you're looking for an advisor who's trying to help you. Make sure he understands your goals. Any advisor should always follow a 6-step process. I'll run through here real fast. But the first step should always be to understand your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. Let them personalize your plan for your future, because every one of us is different. We all have different goals. Maybe some of you want to retire when you're 50, and then some of you want to retire when you're 65. Well, that's going to change. And then, yeah, I agree. 50 is perfect. We make sure that your plan is your plan and not someone else's. So don't let someone, even right now, I think there's the commercial where it's the financial advisor. I think he's from Merrill Lynch or whatever. And they're like, can we change our plan? And he's like, no, this is the plan. And there's like a room of 10 people there, and they're asking a lot of questions. That's a good commercial. That's a good idea of what we're trying to say here. Let it be tailored to you. After he gathers the goals and tries to figure out what you're trying to accomplish, the second thing he or she should always do is take a deep dive into what you're currently doing. Gathering as much information as possible. Don't be afraid to share and open up. In this interview, I almost compare this second part. I always compare it almost being with a doctor. If you hide things from your doctor, and you have issues, he's never going to find out about it, right? It's going to come out too late. It's the same here when you're working with a financial advisor. The more you share with him, the easier it'll be to help to put together a plan for the future that's tailored to you. Again, like compared to construction, if you find out, okay, this is the budget, this is what we want to do, it makes it a lot easier for you to put together a plan for your customers. So the second step of a financial advisor would always do is ask as much questions and share as much information to him as you're comfortable doing, and even more than you're comfortable, because that way he can put together a plan that's valuable for you. Make sure he works with a team. No one can do everything on their own. And why that's important is because the team can include a CPA, it can include your attorney. Make sure that he's working with a team of professionals that can put together a plan that makes sure that it's going to be successful. We here, like our firm, for example, just give you an example. We have a gentleman here who his whole job is to make sure the health insurance for our clients, whether they're on Medicare or whether they're on a group plan, is the proper plan for them. We have a gentleman here who life insurance is his sole focus. All they do is life insurance to make sure that it's designed properly and it's there for the client and their specific needs. So if you're making sure that you have someone who can look at all the aspects of your financial plan, they all work together. They're all intertwined and work better. After that, after he develops a plan and brings it to you, he should be able to share and educate. Make sure that you understand what your investments are doing for you, why you're investing in certain products, why you're investing a certain amount of money every month, because what's the goal? What are we trying to get to? and always make sure that he lets you be in charge. And I would imagine all of you are, you know, yes, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. And this is the goal for the future. And then, unfortunately, what happens a lot in this industry is it can be very transactional, might be the right word. So make sure you get someone has been in the industry for a while and who's going to be here to help you through your plan. A good advisor should meet with you at least every year, preferably every 6 months, because throughout the whole 30 years of your working career, things change, right? We want to make sure that as changes happen, that you update, that you monitor the plan, that you make sure that it fits your current needs. So when you're choosing an advisor to invest or someone to help you, a lot of people think it's expensive to have a financial advisor. It really isn't. And I can give you some more information on that later, but if you have questions, but talk to someone whose job it is, and let them make sure that you've talked to someone who follows these 6 steps, who understands the different planning, like Karen just talked about, as far as how your taxable accounts, how your non-qualified or your tax-free accounts, and then your savings accounts, things like that, all work together in order to build a successful financial plan. Any questions on any of this? Let's open it up to any questions, anything you guys, you came here, you probably didn't come here to listen to us give this spiel. So what questions do you have for us that we can answer today? And if it's about cryptocurrency, I'm going to defer that one.
That's all the questions are about.
That's all. I got all the questions out of the way. Go ahead.
You just did that well.
Good. We appreciate being here. I know some of you may have met Tracy Corbett before. She generally is our kind of liaison with your team here. She's been on some of your meetings before. She couldn't make it today. So Terrence and I were glad that we could sit in and kind of explain some of what we do. If you are interested in talking to someone and have some more one-on-one questions, Kathy has my information. She can get it to you. And we'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have about your specific needs.
Terrence and David, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, I will send out their contact information so you have it. And just in case you have any personal or more specific questions that you want to ask. And then just so you know, RedBridge Financial is a ABC member. So we appreciate that. And you know that it's someone, company that you can all trust. So thanks again for joining us, everybody. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.